The morning briefing at Westbrook Military Leadership Academy started at 0600 hours sharp. Captain Alexander Kincaid stood at the back of the conference room, arms crossed, watching 24 cadets file in with varying degrees of enthusiasm. She'd been at the academy for 2 weeks, long enough to recognize patterns, not long enough to be accepted. She was 28 years old and carried herself with the economy of movement that came from 18 months in Fallujah. Her combat boots were worn at precisely the points where 1,000 tactical entries had stressed the leather. The scar running along her left forearm caught the fluorescent light, a souvenir from a firefight that had earned her the Bronze Star and the call sign that followed her like a shadow. Raven. They called her that after she'd extracted 3 wounded Marines through a kill zone most men wouldn't have crossed alone. She wore her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, severe and practical. No makeup. No jewelry except dog tags that hung beneath her instructor polo shirt carrying a name that still meant something in certain circles. Kincaid. Lieutenant Dane Wolcott entered the conference room like he owned it. 32 years old and bitter about every year that separated him from his prime. His instructor uniform was tailored tighter than regulations strictly allowed, every button polished to mirror shine, every crease sharp enough to draw blood. He moved to the front of the room without acknowledging Alex's presence. Deliberate dismissal disguised as oversight. He'd washed out of SEAL training at 26. The official record said medical disqualification. The unofficial truth, whispered in instructor lounges when they thought she couldn't hear, was psychological unsuitability. Something about ego and team cohesion. Something about officers who couldn't subordinate themselves to mission objectives. 6 years later, those whispers still burned in his gut like battery acid. Attention! Sergeant Major Rusty Brennan's voice cut through the morning chatter. 58 years old, carved from oak and cigarette smoke, he'd been watching training evolutions for 3 decades. Could smell bullshit from 100 meters. The cadets snapped to attention. Mostly males, 3 females in the formation. One of the female cadets, Melissa Frost, was barely 5'4" and maybe 120 pounds. She'd scored top marks in academics and bottom quartile in physical assessments. The academy had accepted her anyway because Congress was watching and diversity metrics mattered. Academy Director Patterson entered. Thin man, 60 years old, logistics background before taking this position. He'd made his skepticism about female combat instructors clear in their first meeting. Hadn't said it directly, didn't need to. His tone said everything. Morning. Patterson's voice carried bureaucratic exhaustion. Today's briefing covers the upcoming field evolution. Lieutenant Wolcott will explain parameters. Dane moved to the podium with practiced confidence. 48-hour tactical exercise. Departure 0600 tomorrow. 2 teams. Objective reach, Alpha Point secure package returned to base. Standard rules of engagement. Paintball markers only. He clicked to the next slide. Team assignments appeared on screen. Team 1 under my command, Cadet Holloway, Cadet Martinez, Cadet Fisher, Cadet Thompson. 4 names, 4 males, 4 cadets who look like recruiting poster material. Brock Holloway especially. 24 years old, 6'2", congressman's son, linebacker build. The kind of genetic lottery winner who made physical training look effortless. Team 2 under Captain Kincaid's command, Cadet Frost, Cadet Park, Cadet Berkshire, Cadet Cross. Alex's expression didn't change. Didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood what had just happened. She'd been assigned the 4 weakest cadets in the class. Melissa Frost, who couldn't do 10 pull-ups. Jennifer Park, who'd never fired a weapon before academy enrollment. Tommy Berkshire, who was overweight by regulation standards and carried an inhaler. Daniel Cross, who was recovering from a stress fracture in his left foot. It wasn't team assignment, it was sabotage with plausible deniability. Questions, Dane asked. His tone suggested he expected none and welcomed none. Alex raised her hand, waited for acknowledgement that came slowly. Yes, Captain. Equipment allocation. Both teams receive identical loadouts. Standard field packs, water rations, communications gear, medical supplies, distributed by Sergeant Major Brennan yesterday afternoon. Everything staged in the equipment bay. And both teams depart simultaneously. 0600 tomorrow, first light. Alex nodded once, filed away details that would matter later. Equipment staged yesterday afternoon meant someone had access overnight. Communications gear meant electronic tracking. Medical supplies meant command expected injuries. Dismissed, Patterson announced. Team leaders remain for final coordination. The cadets filed out. Alex caught Melissa's eye. The small cadet looked terrified, knew she'd been set up to fail, knew her team was designed to prove female instructors couldn't handle real training. After the room cleared, Patterson turned to Alex and Dane. This evolution is being monitored. GPS tracking, radio communications, observation teams at checkpoints, everything documented. Understood, sir, Dane replied smoothly. Captain Kincaid, are you comfortable with your team assignment? It was a trap question. Complain and prove you couldn't handle adversity. Accept and validate the sabotage. I'm comfortable leading any team assigned, sir. Capability isn't determined by physical attributes alone. Patterson's expression suggested he doubted that. We'll see. Lieutenant Wolcott's team will likely reach the objective first. Your mission is to complete the course within the 48-hour window. That's the standard we're measuring. Translation. We expect you to lose. Just don't lose so badly it becomes embarrassing. Clear, sir. After Patterson left, Dane lingered, moved close enough that Alex could smell his cologne, something expensive and aggressive. You know you can't win this, he said quietly. Your team is designed to fail. It's not personal, it's just reality. Women don't have the physical capability for this kind of training. Alex met his gaze without flinching. Then you should win easily. Nothing to worry about. I'm trying to help you understand. When your team fails, it's going to be used as evidence. Proof that this whole experiment was a mistake. You'll be reassigned to some administrative position. That's the reality you're facing. Noted, Lieutenant. Was there anything else? His jaw tightened. He'd expected fear or anger, got professional neutrality instead. It threw him off script. Just trying to prepare you for what's coming. I've been in Fallujah, Lieutenant. I'm prepared for worse than a training evolution. She walked out before he could respond, left him standing in the empty conference room, his attempt at intimidation falling flat. Outside, the Virginia morning was crisp and clear. November sun cutting through autumn mist. The academy grounds were immaculate, perfectly maintained lawns, buildings that projected authority and tradition. 240 cadets learning to become officers in an institution that had existed since 1946, an institution that wasn't sure women belonged in it. Alex walked toward the equipment bay, needed to inspect her team's gear personally. Trust but verify, especially when the person staging equipment was loyal to Dane Wolcott. Sergeant Major Brennan intercepted her halfway across the parade ground. Morning, Captain. His voice was gravel and cigarettes. Sergeant Major. Saw the team assignments. That's about as fair as a rigged card game. Noticed that. Also noticed Wolcott was in the equipment bay last night, around 2200 hours. Spent about 10 minutes there, alone. Alex stopped walking. Anyone else see him? Just me, was doing rounds. Saw him exit with a small bottle. Didn't have it when he entered. What kind of bottle? Couldn't tell. Small, pharmaceutical looking. Gone when I checked the trash later. Alex processed this. Dane had accessed equipment overnight, brought something in, left something behind. The implications were clear. You file a report, waiting to see if there is something to report. Could have been routine, could have been tampering. Won't know until the evolution starts. Thank you for the heads up. Brennan nodded once. Your daddy was a good man. Served with him briefly before Desert Storm. He was the kind of officer who thought 3 moves ahead, saved lives by being smarter than everyone else. You knew my father. Not well, but enough to respect him. He'd be proud of how you handled that meeting. Didn't take the bait, didn't give them ammunition. After Brennan left, Alex continued to the equipment bay. Large building on the academy's north side. Climate-controlled storage for field gear. Everything from rucksacks to communications equipment to weapons. Her team's gear was staged on the left side. 4 identical packs. She opened the first one methodically. Checked every item against the equipment list. Water bladder rations, first aid kit, poncho, extra socks, fire starter rope. Everything accounted for. But something felt wrong. The water bladders were full. Regulation procedure was to leave them empty until departure. Let cadets fill their own water to ensure freshness. These were pre-filled. She opened a valve, squeezed a small amount into her palm. Clear liquid, no visible contamination. She sniffed it. Faint chemical undertone. Subtle, easy to dismiss as dirty equipment or imagination. But Alex had spent 18 months in Fallujah learning that survival depended on noticing details others missed. This wasn't imagination. She didn't empty the bladders, didn't alert anyone, just made mental notes and continued inspection. If the water was contaminated, revealing that now would trigger investigation that might cancel the evolution. Better to document, prepare countermeasures, use Dane's sabotage against him. That evening, Alex gathered her team in a small classroom away from the main cadet areas. Melissa, Jennifer, Tommy, Daniel. 4 faces showing various degrees of anxiety and resignation. "Sit down," she said. They complied. "Tomorrow we start a 48-hour evolution. You've all seen the team assignments. You know we're at a disadvantage." "Ma'am," Tommy spoke up, his voice uncertain. "Why did they assign us together and we're the weakest cadets in the class?" "Because this isn't just about completing an evolution. It's about proving whether women belong in combat instruction. They've stacked the deck to ensure we fail. That failure will be used as evidence." Jennifer's voice was small. "So we're going to fail. We're going to adapt. Lieutenant Wolcott's team will be faster, stronger. They'll take direct routes and use speed to reach the objective first. We can't match that." "Then how do we win?" Daniel asked. "We don't try to match their speed. We use tactics, terrain, timing. We make them think they've won, then we take the objective when they're not expecting it." Melissa leaned forward. "Guerrilla warfare. Hit them when they're comfortable." "Exactly, you're all smart, top academic performers. We're going to use intelligence to beat strength, but it requires trust. You have to trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that the plan will work even when it looks like we're losing." 4 uncertain nods. Not confidence yet, but willingness to try. That was enough to start with. "Go get rest. We depart at 0600. Bring only what's on the equipment list. And one more thing. When we get our water bladders tomorrow, I want everyone to take small sips throughout the day. Stay hydrated, but don't chug water. Pace yourselves." It was a careful instruction, warning them without revealing the sabotage. If the water was contaminated, slow consumption would delay symptoms. Buy time to find alternatives. After they left, Alex sat alone in the empty classroom, pulled out her phone. No signal. The academy controlled communications. Part of the immersive military environment. She opened her bag, removed a leather-bound journal and a small wooden box. The journal had belonged to her father, Major William Kincaid, killed in Desert Storm, February 1991. She'd been 15 years old, orphaned within 6 months when her mother's cancer held at bay through willpower during deployment finally claimed its victory. Colonel Wyatt Harrington had arrived at the hospital the day her mother died. Age 52, then he'd been her father's closest friend, had made a promise to watch over his buddy's family if something happened. He'd kept that promise, became guardian, became mentor, became the only family she had left. Now 65 and semi-retired, he still served as the Academy's senior advisor, had been the one to bring her here, to give her this opportunity that might become a trap. She opened the wooden box. Inside, nested in velvet, lay 2 bronze stars and a purple heart, medals from Fallujah, proof of capability earned in fire. She didn't wear them, didn't display them, kept them hidden because letting people know her full combat record would change how they evaluated her performance. Better to be underestimated than to have expectations set impossibly high. The journal was her father's combat notes from Desert Storm. She opened to a marked page. February 23, 1991, 3 days before his death. "Harrington asked me today why I analyze everything, why I can't just trust my gut like he does. Told him that guts get people killed. Brains keep them alive." He laughed. Said that's the difference between infantry and intelligence. Maybe so, but I've seen too many good soldiers die because someone trusted their gut instead of their head. If I can save lives by thinking better, by seeing patterns others miss, by being one step ahead of the enemy, then that's what I'll do. Her father had saved Harrington's unit that day by thinking instead of fighting, had analyzed enemy artillery patterns and moved the unit into terrain that looked dangerous but was actually safest based on Iraqi doctrine. 47 lives saved through tactical thinking. 3 days later, he was dead. Artillery shell hit his command post during ceasefire negotiations. Random chance, wrong place, wrong time. All that brilliance snuffed out because war didn't care how smart you were, but his lesson survived. Think clearly, act decisively, save lives. That was the mission. Everything else was noise. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come. Colonel Harrington entered, still moved like a man in uniform despite wearing civilian clothes, khakis and button-down shirt, but his posture was pure military. Ramrod straight, despite the shrapnel still lodged near his spine from Desert Storm. Saw the team assignments, he said without preamble. That's the kind of thing that would get an officer court-martialed if we could prove intent. But we can't prove intent. Dane will claim it was random assignment. Was it? No, it was calculated to ensure maximum difficulty. He wants me to fail publicly. Harrington moved to the window, looked out at the academy grounds where darkness was claiming the buildings. You know why I brought you here? You said the academy needed qualified combat instructors. The academy has plenty of qualified combat instructors. What it needs is someone who understands what your father understood. That warfare has changed, that physical strength matters less than tactical thinking, that the future belongs to officers who can adapt instead of those who can just follow doctrine. He turned from the window. Tomorrow's evolution isn't just about completing a course. It's about proving a principle. That capability transcends physical attributes. That women can lead in combat instruction not by matching male physical standards, but by exceeding male tactical standards. No pressure then. He smiled slightly. You've been in Fallujah. This is kindergarten compared to that. Fallujah didn't have politics. Fallujah had plenty of politics. You just weren't senior enough to see them. This is the same game. Different terrain. You already know how to play. After he left, Alex returned to her quarters. Small room, government furniture, bare walls. She hadn't unpacked much. Wasn't sure she'd be staying long enough to justify making it feel like home. She lay on her bunk and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow would bring the first real test, not just of her physical capability, of her tactical thinking, her leadership, her ability to turn disadvantages into advantages. Dane Wolcott had spent 6 years building a career on the narrative that he'd been unjustly failed by SEAL evaluators, that he was too aggressive, too independent, too alpha for the team-focused special operations culture. He'd spun his washout into badge of honor. Proof he was too good for the SEALs, not insufficient. And now he was going to prove it by destroying the female instructor who threatened his narrative. The beautiful irony, Alex thought, was that Dane would destroy himself. His ego wouldn't let him see the trap, wouldn't let him understand that the moment he sabotaged her water, he'd handed her a tactical advantage. Because now she knew he was willing to cheat, knew his methods, knew his weaknesses. And in Fallujah, she'd learned that knowing your enemy's weaknesses was more valuable than having superior strength. She closed her eyes. Sleep would come eventually. Her body had learned to rest when rest was possible because you never knew when the next chance would arrive. At 0400 hours, her alarm activated. She dressed in darkness, combat boots, BDU's tactical vest, checked every piece of gear twice. Not because she doubted herself, because professionals checked equipment even when they knew it was perfect. She walked across the parade ground in pre-dawn cold. Stars still visible overhead. The equipment bay was already open. Brennan was there supervising as cadets collected their assigned packs. Her team arrived looking nervous. Melissa's hands shook slightly. Jennifer kept adjusting her glasses. Tommy was breathing too fast already. Daniel tried not to show his limp. Gear check, Alex ordered. Every item. Make sure it matches the equipment list. They complied, pulled out items one by one. Water bladders came out last. Alex watched Dane across the bay. He was watching her team, waiting to see if she'd discovered the contamination, waiting for her to make an accusation he could deny. She didn't give him the satisfaction. Gear's good, she announced. Hydrate before we move out. Small sips. Pace yourselves. Dane's team assembled like a recruiting poster, Brock Holloway at the front. 3 other cadets who looked like they'd been carved from granite. They moved with casual confidence, already tasting victory. At 0600 precisely, both teams assembled on the parade ground. Colonel Harrington stood with Academy Director Patterson. Brennan held a stopwatch. Mission parameters, Patterson announced. Alpha Point 20 miles northeast. Secure the objective package. Return to base within 48 hours. GPS tracking active. Medical extraction available via emergency channel. Rules of engagement paintball markers only. Questions. Silence. The kind that preceded competition, combat moments that would be remembered or forgotten based on outcomes. Time starts now. Dismissed. Both teams moved out simultaneously. Dane's team took the main trail system. Direct route, fast and efficient, textbook tactics. Alex led her team off trail within the first 100 meters. Ma'am, Jennifer protested, the trails are faster. The trails are predictable. We're taking the valley route, slower but concealed. We'll never catch them. We're not trying to catch them. We're trying to think better than them. They moved into the dense undergrowth. The going was immediately brutal. Thick vegetation, uneven terrain. Within 15 minutes, Tommy was breathing hard. Jennifer had fallen once. Daniel's limp was already pronounced. But they were invisible, and invisible was more valuable than fast. By hour 3, they'd covered 5 miles to Dane's 8. The mathematics were brutal. At this rate, they'd lose by 6 hours minimum. Unless mathematics wasn't the right equation. Unless tactics mattered more than speed. Alex called a halt in a depression ringed by oak trees. Her cadets collapsed immediately. Water break, 2 minutes. She watched them drink, watched for signs of nausea or distress. Nothing yet. Either the contamination was too diluted or the symptoms hadn't manifested. Ma'am, Melissa spoke up, why are we taking the hard route? Because Lieutenant Wolcott expects us to follow his path, expects us to try to match his speed and fail. We're going to do something he's not expecting. What's that win? The word hung in the air. Impossible. Ridiculous. But said with such absolute conviction that doubt began transforming into possibility. How, Daniel asked. By being smarter. By using terrain and tactics instead of speed and strength. By thinking 3 moves ahead while he's still processing move 1. Alex pulled out her map, showed them the route, the valleys that paralleled the main trails, the northern approach that would bring them to Alpha Point from an unexpected direction, the timing that would put them in position during the enemy's lowest alertness window. This is going to hurt, she said honestly. Every step is going to be harder than it needs to be. You're going to want to quit. But quitting means Wolcott was right. Means women don't belong in combat instruction. Means the next generation of female cadets won't have this opportunity. 4 faces looked back at her. Young, exhausted already, but something new was emerging. Determination, purpose, the understanding that this was bigger than one training evolution. We're not just completing a course, Alex continued. We're proving a principle, that intelligence beats strength, that capability matters more than gender, that the future of military leadership belongs to those who can think clearly when everything's burning. Yes, ma'am, 4 voices replied. Stronger now, more certain. They moved out. The terrain got worse. Stream crossings soaked their boots. Elevation climbs burned their legs. By hour 6, they were 4 miles behind Dane's team. But they were learning to move as a unit, learning to support each other's weaknesses, learning that teamwork could compensate for individual limitations. And Alex was teaching them the most important lesson of all, that warfare wasn't about being strongest or fastest. It was about being smartest and most adaptable. Somewhere ahead, Dane Wolcott's team was racing toward Alpha Point, confident in their superiority, certain of their victory, already celebrating success that seemed inevitable. They had no idea what was coming, had no concept that the woman they dismissed and sabotaged was a combat veteran with 18 months in Fallujah, who'd learned warfare in streets where the enemy didn't wear uniforms and victory belonged to whoever adapted fastest, who'd earned her call sign Raven by thinking instead of fighting, by being smarter instead of stronger, by bringing people home alive when everyone else said it was impossible. The sun climbed higher, the Virginia forest swallowed them. 2 teams, 1 objective, 48 hours to prove whether capability transcended gender or whether prejudice was justified. Alex led her team deeper into the wilderness, away from the trails, away from the predictable routes, into terrain that looked like defeat but was actually tactical genius. Because she'd learned something in Fallujah that Dane Wolcott would never understand. The loudest fighter rarely wins. The smartest one does. And tomorrow, when his team sat comfortable at Alpha Point thinking they'd won, she'd demonstrate that lesson with devastating clarity. The mission was engaged. The trap was set. All that remained was execution. And Captain Alexander Kincaid had never failed to execute when it mattered most. The Virginia wilderness swallowed them at first light. 20 miles of unforgiving terrain stretched between the Academy and Alpha Point, a decommissioned communications facility that existed now only as coordinates on a map and an objective that would determine whether Captain Alexandra Kincaid had a future in military instruction. She stood in the pre-dawn cold with 4 cadets who looked defeated before the mission began. Cadet Melissa Frost, 22, 5'4", brilliant with logistics, but struggled with every physical assessment. Cadet Jennifer Park, 23, pre-law track, had never fired a weapon before academy enrollment. Cadet Tommy Berkshire, overweight by regulation standards, carried an inhaler in his cargo pocket and a senator father who'd made calls to prevent his washout. Cadet Daniel Cross, stress fracture in his left foot barely healed. Walking with a limp, he thought nobody noticed. 200 meters east, Lieutenant Dane Wolcott's team assembled like a recruiting poster come to life. Brock Holloway at formation, head square-jawed and confident. 3 other cadets who looked like they'd been carved from granite and raised on protein supplements. They moved with the casual certainty of people who'd never genuinely failed at anything. Sergeant Major Rusty Brennan stood between the formations reading mission parameters in a voice that carried across the clearing like artillery fire. Alpha Point Grid coordinates November 7345. Decommissioned communications facility. Your mission reached the facility, secure the objective package inside, return to base. Time limit 48 hours from departure. Rules of engagement, paintball markers only. Medical extraction available via emergency channel. Questions. Silence answered him. The kind that preceded combat competitions, moments that would be remembered or erased based on outcomes nobody could predict. Departure at 0600, 30 minutes. Use your time. The team separated into tactical huddles. Alex gathered her 4 cadets in close. Read their body language like text. Melissa's shoulders hunched defensively. Jennifer couldn't meet her eyes. Tommy shifted weight constantly, already uncomfortable. Daniel stood too still, trying not to favor his injured foot. None of them believed they could win. Listen, Alex kept her voice low but firm. Wolcott's team will move fast. They're trained for speed and direct action. That's their strength. Ma'am, Jennifer's voice wavered. We can't match their pace. They'll reach the objective hours before us. Correct. Which is why we won't try to match their pace. 4 sets of confused eyes fixed on her. They'll take the direct route. Main trails, ridgelines, open terrain. Fast but predictable. We're taking the valley systems. Slower but concealed. They won't see us. Won't track us. Won't know where we are until it's too late. But ma'am, Tommy protested, the valleys will be brutal. Heavy vegetation, stream crossings. Exhausting, Alex finished. Yes, but invisible beats fast in warfare. Every single time. Trust the process. Check your gear. We move in 20. At 0600 precisely, both teams departed. Wolcott's column headed straight down the main trail system, weapons ready, moving in textbook tactical formation, playing soldier in woods that hadn't seen real danger since the Revolutionary War. Alex led her team off trail within the first 100 meters. Jennifer stumbled immediately over exposed roots. Tommy's breathing became labored before they'd covered a quarter mile. Daniel's limp grew more pronounced with each step. But Melissa surprised at everyone. Small and compact, she navigated undergrowth with unexpected efficiency. Caught Alex's eye and nodded understanding. She got it. Saw the tactical logic beneath the physical misery. By hour 3, they'd covered 5 miles to Wolcott's 8. The mathematics were brutal and simple. At this rate, they'd lose by 6 hours minimum. Alex called halt in a depression ringed by oak trees. Her cadets collapsed like puppets with cut strings. Tommy wheezed dangerously. Jennifer's glasses had fogged completely. Daniel sat with his injured foot elevated, face tight with pain he refused to voice. Water, Alex ordered. 2 minutes, then we continue. She pulled out her own bladder. Took a long pull. The water tasted wrong. faint chemical undertone that made her pause. She'd noticed it earlier, dismissed it as dirty equipment or imagination. Now she knew better. Stop drinking. Everyone. Right now. The cadets froze, confusion transforming to concern as they read her expression. Alex moved to Tommy's pack, extracted his water bladder, opened the valve and squeezed liquid into her palm. The chemical smell was unmistakable. She'd learned it during combat medic training. Ipecac syrup, a medic agent designed to induce vomiting, diluted enough to avoid immediate detection, concentrated enough to incapacitate within hours. Our water's been sabotaged. The words dropped like grenades. Someone contaminated it. Probably during final equipment check last night. Jennifer's face drained of color. We've been drinking it all morning. I know. We're going to get sick. Within 2 hours, maybe 3 depending on body mass and dilution. Tommy sat down hard. Then we're done. Mission's over. Melissa was staring at Alex with something between horror and revelation. You knew. That's why you brought us through Stream Valleys. Alex nodded once. Water, running water. We can filter and refill from streams, replace what's contaminated with clean supply. That takes time, Daniel protested. Wolcott's team is already 10 miles ahead. Let them be. Speed doesn't matter if you're too sick to fight when you arrive. Alex pulled her ceramic water filter, military issue designed to remove 99.9% of contaminants, moved to the nearest stream where clear water ran over smooth stones, began the slow process of filtration while her cadets watched in silence. Someone had tried to poison them. Not fatally, but enough to make them fail spectacularly. Enough to prove that women couldn't handle the pressure of real operations. The contaminated water got dumped, bladders refilled with filtered mountain runoff. The process consumed 40 precious minutes, but arriving at the objective while vomiting would accomplish nothing except validating Wolcott's prejudices. While they worked, Alex's mind returned unbidden to Fallujah. November 2003, urban warfare at its most brutal. She'd been a first lieutenant, then 27 years old, attached to a mixed unit doing house-to-house clearing in the industrial district. The memory arrived complete. Full sensory immersion the way trauma memories did. Cordite smell mixing with burning plastic. Dust taste that infiltrated everything. AK-47 fire starting distant and becoming immediate in seconds. Her squad had moved through a warehouse complex. Intel said clear. Intel was catastrophically wrong. The IED was buried in a support column. Command detonated. Someone watching and waiting for the perfect moment. The explosion transformed reality into white noise and flying debris. Alex remembered being airborne, hitting concrete hard enough to crack her helmet, the ringing in her ears that made everything sound underwater. 3 Marines down, 2 with shrapnel wounds, 1 with a sucking chest wound filling his lung cavity with blood. The enemy was still out there, still watching, waiting for rescue operations so they could detonate the secondary device. Standard doctrine said, call immediate extraction, get the wounded out, wait for reinforcements, play it safe and by the book. Alex had looked at the tactical situation and seen something different, saw that the enemy expected predictable American responses, expected panic, expected them to follow doctrine written for different circumstances. She'd gathered her remaining 8 Marines, given orders that sounded insane. Don't evacuate. Don't call backup. Move forward toward the enemy position. Use speed and aggression to collapse their decision timeline. It worked because it violated expectations. They'd flanked the enemy observation post within 3 minutes, neutralized the threat, secured the building, then called for medical extraction from a position the enemy could no longer target. 3 Marines survived because Alex had done the opposite of doctrine, had thought faster than the enemy, had adapted when tradition demanded rigidity. She'd earned her Bronze Star that day, earned her call sign Raven, earned respect from men who doubted her right up until she'd saved their lives. Water's clean, she announced, pulling herself back to the present. We move in 5. New route, we're circling north, coming at the objective from the opposite direction Wolcott expects. Ma'am, Melissa studied the map, that adds 4 miles to our route and puts us 12 hours behind schedule, but they're sitting at the objective right now, getting comfortable. Comfort makes people sloppy. We'll arrive tired, but motivated. They'll be bored and overconfident. Understanding dawned across four faces. They were beginning to see it. This wasn't about physical capability. It was about tactical thinking, about using enemy assumptions as weapons. They moved out on the new route. Harder terrain, a ridgeline climbing 600 feet in elevation. Tommy struggled with every step. Jennifer fell twice, skinning both palms. Daniel's limp became a pronounced hobble. But they kept moving, because something had shifted. They'd started to believe. Hour 12 arrived with twilight. The forest transformed into shadows and uncertainty. Wolcott's team radio chatter suggested celebration. Mission accomplished. Objective secured. Nothing to do but wait for time limit expiration and claim victory. Alex's team was still 4 miles out, exhausted, running on willpower and spite. She called halt in a natural depression, offering concealment and wind protection. 6 hours rest, 2 on watch, 2 sleeping. We move at 0200 hours. Why 0200, ma'am? Jennifer asked. Because that's when human alertness hits rock bottom. Circadian rhythm. Even trained soldiers struggle between 0200 and 400. Wolcott's team thinks they've won. They'll be sloppy. That's our window. They ate cold rations, MREs that tasted like cardboard but provided necessary calories. Alex noticed her cadets rationing food without being told. Learning resource management through necessity, small victories that mattered more than they realized. While Melissa and Jennifer took first watch, Alex sat against a tree and let exhaustion wash over her. Every muscle ached. The old wound in her forearm throbbed. Legacy of Fallujah. Reminder of mortality. 30 miles away at Westbrook Academy, Colonel Harrington sat in the operations center, watching monitors displaying both team positions via GPS. Sergeant Major Brennan stood beside him, arms crossed, expression revealing nothing. She's 4 miles behind, Academy Director Patterson observed. He'd arrived an hour ago to witness what he clearly expected would validate his skepticism. No way she closes that gap. Harrington said nothing, just watched the screen showing Alex's position, holding steady. Your protege is going to fail, Colonel, Patterson continued, and this experiment will be over. We'll see. On another monitor, footage from earlier played on loop. The sabotaged water being discovered. The filtration process. The decision to take the longer route. Every choice documented, recorded, analyzed. Brennan leaned close, spoke quietly. Wolcott contaminated that water personally. I have a witness. Video footage from the equipment bay. Timestamp matches. Harrington's expression didn't change. Can you prove it? Yes, sir. Clear evidence. Hold it. Don't reveal yet. Sir, Alex needs to win on merit, not because we disqualified Wolcott on a technicality. The victory has to be clean or it means nothing. Brennan nodded slowly, understanding the political calculus, the message it would send. What if she loses? Harrington finally looked away from the monitors. His eyes were hard, absolute. She won't. At 200 hours, Alex's team moved out in darkness. No lights, no noise. 90 minutes of careful movement through terrain. Wolcott's team hadn't bothered scouting because they'd approached from the opposite direction. Alex positioned her team on a ridge overlooking Alpha Point. Below, she could see Wolcott's camp. 4 sleeping bags around a small fire. 1 sentry on duty. Brock Holloway sitting in a camp chair playing on his phone. Paintball marker leaning against a tree 5 feet away. Sloppy, overconfident, exactly as predicted. Melissa, Alex whispered, you're fastest. Think you can reach that marker before he does. The small cadet studied the distance, the approach angle, the timing required. Yes, ma'am. Jennifer, Tommy, you're with me. We go 30 seconds after Melissa moves. Daniel, overwatch position. If anyone else wakes you, engage. Clear. 4 quiet acknowledgements. Alex checked her watch. 03:42 hours. The dead zone when human alertness hit absolute bottom. Melissa, go. The small cadet moved like a ghost, low, fast, silent. She covered 30 meters before Brock even registered movement. By the time he started to stand, she'd grabbed his marker, pointed it at his chest. You're out. Brock stared in disbelief. His hand moved toward the radio on his vest. Don't. Alex emerged from darkness with her own marker trained on his center mass. Behind her, Tommy and Jennifer covered the sleeping team. Dead men don't make radio calls. Dane Wolcott exploded from his sleeping bag. saw the situation, saw his team covered, saw Alex standing there in perfect tactical formation. What the hell is this objective seizure, Lieutenant? Your team is neutralized. Mission complete. You cheated. We adapted. Different things. Dane's face flushed red even in firelight. You sabotaged us somehow. Actually, someone sabotaged my team's water supply. We overcame it. That's called leadership, Lieutenant. Bullshit. I had this won. You reached the objective and assumed victory. Then got comfortable. Stopped maintaining security. That's complacency. Gets people killed in real operations. Dane looked like he wanted to strike her. His hands clenched. Breathing accelerated. All signs of losing control. Finally, he keyed his radio. Command, this is Team 2. Mission failure. Objective taken by opposing force. Harrington's voice came through clear and emotionless. Acknowledged. Both teams returned to base. Debrief at 0900. The return march should have been routine. Both teams exhausted but intact. Mission complete. But at hour 40, approaching a technical climb up a 20-foot cliff, Dane made his final move. The cliff wasn't dangerous with proper technique, but it required focus, concentration, the kind of moment where accidents happened. Alex was 15 feet up when she felt hands grab her ankle, not helping, pulling, hard. She looked down. Brock Holloway below her, face twisted with desperation and rage. You don't belong here, he hissed. He yanked. Alex's grip slipped. For one terrible moment, she was airborne. 15 feet of empty space between her body and the rocks below. Training took over. She twisted midair, pulled her body into a combat roll, hit the ground hard enough to crack ribs, but not hard enough to break her spine. Impact drove air from her lungs. Pain exploded across her left side like white fire. Above, Dane's voice carried down with unmistakable satisfaction. Die, bitch. Then silence. The kind that came after something irreversible. Alex lay still for 3 seconds. Let them think she was badly hurt. Let them panic and reveal themselves. Then she opened her eyes, looked up at Dane and Brock staring down in shock. I'm fine, she said through gritted teeth. But you two just crossed a line you can't uncross. Harrington arrived 30 seconds later. He'd been monitoring from the trail below. Saw everything. His face was granite. Wolcott, Holloway, radio command, report what you just did. Dane's face went pale. Sir, it was an accident. I watched you give the order. I watched Cadet Holloway execute it. You deliberately endangered an officer's life. That's assault under the uniform code. Medics arrived within 5 minutes. Alex refused the stretcher. Stood on her own despite broken ribs screaming protest. Looked at Dane with eyes that had seen men die and felt nothing. You wanted to prove women can't handle pressure, she said quietly. Instead, you proved you can't handle being beaten by one. The walk back to base took 3 hours. Alex moved through pain that would have stopped most people. Broken ribs, bruised spine. Every breath felt like being stabbed. But she walked, because lying down meant Dane won. Meant his narrative became truth. Meant the experiment failed and women got blamed for one man's criminal desperation. Her team walked with her. Melissa on her left, Jennifer on her right, Tommy and Daniel flanking behind. They'd started this evolution as individuals. They returned as a unit. That was the real victory, not the objective secured or the mission completed. The transformation of doubt into capability. The proof that leadership mattered more than physical strength. They reached Westbrook Academy at 1400 hours. The parade ground was full. Word had spread. The female instructor had won despite sabotage, despite assault, despite everything stacked against her. The cadets assembled on the parade ground didn't applaud, didn't cheer, just stood in absolute silence as Alex led her team across the field toward the medical building. That silence said more than any applause could have. It was respect, recognition, acknowledgement that they'd witnessed something that would be studied and debated and remembered. Dane Wolcott walked behind them, separated by 50 meters. His team wouldn't look at him. Brock Holloway walked alone, already understanding his military career was over before it began. Colonel Harrington met Alex at the medical building entrance. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held something she'd only seen once before. The day he'd told her that her father had been killed in Desert Storm. Pride mixed with grief. The understanding that victory came with costs nobody wanted to pay. "You should be on a stretcher," he said quietly. "I walk or Wolcott wins." He's already lost the moment he gave that order. "Then I walk because I can, because they need to see it's possible." Harrington nodded once, stepped aside, let her enter the medical building on her own terms. Inside, doctors confirmed 2 broken ribs, severe bruising across her back, and left side possible concussion. They wanted to admit her for observation. She refused. Accepted pain medication and a compression wrap. Nothing more. By 1600 hours, she was back in her quarters, standing at her window watching sunset paint the academy gold and crimson, watching Dane Wolcott being escorted to the administration building by 2 MPs, watching Brock Holloway sitting alone on a bench with his head in his hands. She'd won, proven her point, demonstrated capability under impossible conditions, but victory felt hollow somehow, because it required someone else's destruction, required exposing the worst in people instead of elevating the best. A knock at her door interrupted the thought. "Come." Harrington entered, closed the door, moved to stand beside her at the window. "Patterson wants charges filed. Assault, sabotage, conduct unbecoming. The full weight of military justice." "No." "Raven, I didn't come here to destroy careers. I came to prove capability matters more than gender. Pressing charges makes this about punishment, makes me look vindictive instead of professional. He tried to kill you. He tried to break me. Different thing. And he failed. That's the message that matters. Not that I can destroy men who oppose me, that I can beat them despite their opposition." Harrington was silent for a long moment. "Your father would have made the same calculation." "Then I learned something useful from him." "Patterson won't like it." "Patterson doesn't have to like it. He just has to accept it." After Harrington left, Alex stood alone at her window, watched darkness claim the academy grounds. Somewhere out there, Dane Wolcott was facing the end of his career. Brock Holloway was learning that following bad orders destroyed futures. But tomorrow, 24 cadets would wake up knowing something they hadn't known before. That capability transcended gender. That tactical thinking beat physical strength. That the future of military leadership would be determined by merit, not tradition. That was worth 2 broken ribs and a bruised spine. That was worth everything. The medical ward at Westbrook Academy smelled of antiseptic and institutional efficiency. Captain Alexandra Kincaid sat on an examination table, while a doctor wrapped compression bandages around her rib cage with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Each breath felt like being stabbed. Each movement sent lightning through her left side. 2 broken ribs, severe bruising across her back and spine, possible concussion from the impact. The doctor wanted to admit her for overnight observation. She'd refused, accepted pain medication and the compression wrap. Nothing more. "You should stay," the doctor said. Older man, maybe 60, with the resigned expression of someone who'd learned that soldiers rarely took medical advice seriously. "Those ribs need monitoring. If one punctures a lung..." "I understand the risks. I'm declining admission." "Captain, you fell 15 feet onto rocks. You're lucky to be walking." "I'm aware. Sign my discharge papers, please." The doctor sighed but complied. He'd been at military installations long enough to recognize when arguing was futile. Some officers would rather die than show weakness. Alex wasn't quite that extreme. But she understood optics, understood that being admitted to medical meant Dane Wolcott's narrative gained credibility, that women couldn't handle the physical demands, that she'd been injured because she was inadequate, not because she'd been criminally assaulted. She left the medical building at 16:30 hours, moved slowly because moving fast was impossible, each step careful, measured. Her team waited outside. Melissa, Jennifer, Tommy, Daniel. They'd refused to leave until they knew she was okay. "Ma'am," Melissa spoke first. "Are you?" "I'm fine. Go get cleaned up. Debrief is at 1800 in the Tactical Operations Center. Be there." They hesitated, wanted to say something more, wanted to acknowledge what they'd witnessed, what they'd accomplished together. But military protocol didn't leave space for sentiment during duty hours. "Yes, ma'am." 4 voices in unison. They moved off toward the cadet barracks. Alex walked alone across the parade ground. Sunset painted everything gold and red. Cadets who'd heard about the evolution stopped and stared, some with respect, some with disbelief, all with the understanding that they'd witnessed something that would be discussed for years. She reached her quarters, closed the door, let herself show the pain she'd been hiding, lowered herself onto her bed with movements that took 30 seconds and should have taken 3. Lay flat and stared at the ceiling and let the medication begin its slow work. Her phone buzzed. Text from Harrington. Medical cleared you. Good. Patterson wants emergency meeting before debrief. My office 1700. Don't be late. She closed her eyes. 15 minutes. That's all she needed. 15 minutes of horizontal existence before the next battle began. Because this wasn't over. The field evolution was complete. The tactical victory was secured. But the political battle was just starting. Patterson wanted blood, wanted charges filed, wanted Dane Wolcott destroyed as an example. And Alex had to convince him that mercy was tactically superior to vengeance. At 1700 hours exactly, she entered Harrington's office, found the colonel behind his desk, Academy Director Patterson sitting across from him, Sergeant Major Brennan standing against the back wall like a statue carved from disapproval. Captain Kincaid. Patterson's voice was tight, controlled, the tone of someone barely containing fury. Sit down. She remained standing. Sitting with broken ribs was agony. Standing was merely painful. I'll stand, sir. Patterson's eyes narrowed. Colonel Harrington briefed me on the incident during your return march. Lieutenant Wolcott ordered Cadet Holloway to assault you, cause serious injury. That's criminal conduct. I want charges filed immediately. No, sir. The word landed like a grenade. Patterson's face flushed red. Excuse me. I'm declining to press charges against Lieutenant Wolcott or Cadet Holloway. Captain, they tried to kill you. They tried to injure me. Different intent. And they failed. I completed the mission with broken ribs. That proves my capability more effectively than any court-martial. This isn't about proving capability. This is about maintaining discipline and order. Officers who assault other officers must face consequences. They will face consequences, sir, just not criminal charges from me. Patterson stood, moved around the desk, got close enough that Alex could see the vein pulsing in his temple. You're making a mistake. Wolcott will spin this as weakness, as proof that women can't handle confrontation. He can try, but everyone saw me complete the mission after his assault. Everyone saw me walk back to base instead of taking medical evacuation. The optics favor me regardless of whether I press charges. The optics, Patterson's voice rose. This isn't about optics. This is about justice. With respect, sir, this is entirely about optics. If I press charges, the narrative becomes female officer destroys male officer's career because she can't handle competition. If I don't press charges, the narrative becomes female officer demonstrates professional restraint despite criminal assault. The second narrative serves the mission better. Harrington had been silent throughout. Now he spoke quietly. She's right, Patterson. Tactically, she's absolutely right. This is insane. Patterson turned on him. You're both insane. Wolcott contaminated her water supply, ordered a cadet to push her off a cliff, and you want to let him walk away. I didn't say let him walk away, Alex replied. I said I won't press charges. There's a difference. Administrative action is still available. Relief of duty, reassignment, other than honorable discharge if warranted. Those consequences come from command authority, not from me seeking vengeance. Patterson stared at her for a long moment. You're more politically astute than I gave you credit for. I'm tactically astute, sir. I just apply tactics to different terrain. Despite himself, Patterson almost smiled. You remind me of someone. Can't quite place who. Her father, Harrington said quietly. Major William Kincaid, military intelligence. Saved my unit in Desert Storm by thinking 3 moves ahead while I was still processing move 1. Patterson nodded slowly, understanding dawning. You're Jack Kincaid's daughter. I served with him briefly. Brilliant officer. Died too young. Yes, sir. The director returned to his chair, sat heavily. Against my better judgment, I'll support your decision, but understand this, Captain. You're setting a precedent. Officers watching this will draw conclusions about how assault gets handled. Make sure you can live with those conclusions. I can, sir, because the precedent I'm setting is that capability matters more than retribution, that professional excellence beats personal vengeance. That's the precedent I want. Noted, debrief in 1 hour. I expect both teams present full accounting of events, every decision documented. Clear. Yes, sir. After Patterson left, Alex remained standing in Harrington's office. The old colonel studied her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You sure about this, Raven? No, but it's the right move tactically. Your father would have done the same thing. Then I learned something useful from him. Harrington opened a desk drawer, pulled out a folder marked confidential in red letters. Before you go to debrief, you should see this. Sergeant Major Brennan's investigation results. He spread documents across his desk, security camera footage stills showing Dane entering the equipment bay, laboratory analysis of the contaminated water, testimony from Cadet Holloway confessing to following orders, witness statements from other cadets who'd overheard Dane planning the sabotage, and one more document, faded, 6 years old, psychological evaluation from SEAL training. Alex read it slowly. Clinical language describing Dane Wolcott's fundamental unsuitability for team operations, his inability to accept criticism, his retaliatory ideation toward evaluators, his ego-driven decision-making that endangered unit cohesion. This is why he washed out, she said quietly. Yes, and this is why he tried to destroy you. You represent everything he couldn't become. Professional, team-focused, capable of subordinating ego to mission success. Does he know you have this? Not yet. I'm holding it for the debrief. Patterson wants full disclosure. Every piece of evidence on the table. Alex studied the documents, saw the full picture of what had happened. Not just one man's prejudice against women, but one man's desperate attempt to validate a career built on lies, to prove that his SEAL washout was unjust, to demonstrate that the evaluators who'd failed him were wrong. She'd just been the convenient target. The proof he needed that standards were being lowered, that politics trumped capability, that his failure was systemic injustice rather than personal inadequacy. Understanding didn't create sympathy, but it created context. And context mattered when deciding how to respond. Show him at the debrief, she said. Let him see what we have. Let him understand that his career is over because of his choices, not because of any conspiracy. Mercy and transparency. Your father would be proud. My father's dead because someone made a bad tactical decision. I'd rather he was alive and disappointed in me. Harrington's expression softened. He wouldn't be disappointed, Raven. He'd understand exactly why you're making these choices. The Tactical Operations Center filled at 1800 hours. Both teams assembled on opposite sides of the briefing table. Alex's team on the left still showing signs of their ordeal. Melissa's hands were bandaged from rope burns. Jennifer's glasses were taped where they'd broken during a fall. Tommy moved stiffly, muscles screaming from exertion. Daniel's limp had returned with a vengeance. But they held themselves differently now. Shoulders back, eyes forward. The posture of people who discovered capability they hadn't known they possessed. Dane's team sat on the right. Brock Holloway wouldn't meet anyone's gaze. The other 3 cadets looked angry and defensive, like they'd been wronged instead of outmaneuvered and exposed. Dane himself sat at rigid attention, face a mask of professional neutrality. But Alex had spent 18 months in Fallujah learning to read people, to see past surfaces into the calculations underneath. He was planning something, had already decided his defense. This debrief was just theater before his counterattack. Patterson sat at the head of the table, Harrington to his right. Brennan stood against the back wall. The room felt smaller than it was, compressed by tension and unspoken accusations. This after-action review will address the 48-hour field evolution and subsequent incident during return march, Patterson began. His voice carried absolute authority. Both teams will present their approach and outcomes. Evidence will be presented. Decisions will be made. Lieutenant Wolcott, begin. Dane stood, moved to the display screen. His movements were controlled, professional, every inch the competent officer conducting routine business. My team utilized direct action to reach Alpha Point 12 hours ahead of schedule, he began. We maintained tactical discipline throughout, secured the objective, and established defensive perimeter per doctrine. However, we failed to anticipate Captain Kincaid's night approach during our lowest alertness period. Lesson learned: complacency compromises security regardless of apparent victory. He clicked through photos. The facility, the defensive positions, everything textbook perfect. The admission of tactical failure was smooth, practiced, like he'd rehearsed taking responsibility while simultaneously minimizing its significance. Regarding the incident during return march, his tone shifted slightly. Cadet Holloway acted on his own initiative. I had no knowledge of his intentions. When I saw Captain Kincaid fall, my reaction was shock, not satisfaction. Any suggestion otherwise is mischaracterization. He sat down. The defense was elegant. Blame the subordinate. Claim ignorance. Deny intent. Professional enough to be plausible. Calculated enough to be transparent. Captain Kincaid, Patterson gestured. Alex stood carefully. Every movement deliberate, because moving wrong meant showing pain, meant giving Dane ammunition. She walked to the display screen, called up her team's GPS track, the wandering route through valleys, the detours, the added distance that made no sense to anyone who hadn't been there. My team was assigned cadets with limited physical capabilities, she stated without judgment. Direct competition on speed was futile. We adapted using terrain concealment and timing to offset disadvantages. She clicked through her presentation. The contaminated water discovery, the filtration process, the northern approach, the 0200 hours movement during enemy low alertness. Our victory was achieved through tactical planning that exploited enemy assumptions and doctrine gaps. They expected us to follow their route. We used that expectation against them. And the fall, Patterson asked. I was 15 feet up, a technical climb, when someone grabbed my ankle and pulled. I lost my grip, fell. Training allowed me to minimize injury. I completed the return march despite broken ribs because the mission required it. Who grabbed your ankle? Cadet Holloway, sir. Did Lieutenant Wolcott give the order? This was the moment, the decision point. Alex could end Dane's career with one word. Could trigger the criminal investigation Patterson wanted. Could prove that women could destroy men who oppose them. Or she could demonstrate something more powerful. That capability didn't require crushing opposition. That professional excellence spoke louder than personal vengeance. I can't definitively prove Lieutenant Wolcott gave a direct order, she said carefully. I can prove Cadet Holloway grabbed my ankle. I can prove I was injured. I can prove Lieutenant Wolcott said, "Die, bitch," immediately after I fell. Whether those facts constitute criminal conspiracy or coincidental bad judgment is for command to determine. Dane's head snapped toward her. Shock evident despite his attempts at control. He'd expected her to press charges, to demand his destruction. Her restraint had broken his script. Sergeant Major Brennan, Patterson's voice cut through the tension. Your investigation findings. Brennan pushed off the wall, moved to the display screen with the inexorable quality of justice delayed but not denied. He pulled up security footage. The video showed the equipment bay. Timestamp 2200 hours the night before evolution. Dane entering with a small bottle, spending 2 minutes at Alex's team's equipment rack, leaving without the bottle. Laboratory analysis confirmed ipecac syrup in Captain Kincaid's team's water supply. Brennan's voice was flat. Clinical, non-lethal emetic agent, would have caused severe vomiting within 2 to 3 hours of consumption. Lieutenant Wolcott accessed the equipment bay during the only window when it wasn't monitored. The contamination was deliberate. He pulled up another document. Testimony from Cadet Holloway. Written statement describing Dane's orders to ensure Captain Kincaid's team fails by any means necessary. Instructions to create accidents during training that would demonstrate female inadequacy. Cadet Holloway has provided sworn testimony that Lieutenant Wolcott ordered him to physically intimidate Captain Kincaid during the return march. The exact phrasing was, "Make sure she doesn't finish on her feet." The room went absolutely silent, not empty silence, the silence of people holding their breath. Dane stood slowly, his professional mask cracking. That footage proves nothing except routine equipment inspection. Holloway's testimony is self-serving fabrication to avoid responsibility for his own actions. Then explain this. Brennan pulled up the final document. The psychological evaluation from SEAL training, 6 years old, devastating in its clinical precision. The assessment filled the screen. Difficulty accepting criticism. Retaliatory ideation. Ego-driven decision-making, endangering unit cohesion. Assessment. Unsuitable for special operations. Recommend reassignment with close supervision. This evaluation is classified. Dane's voice rose. Control slipping. You had no authority. I had every authority when an officer demonstrated the exact behavioral patterns the evaluation predicted. Harrington's voice was cold. Absolute. You sabotaged Captain Kincaid because you couldn't accept that she succeeded where you failed, that she earned respect through capability while you demanded it through intimidation. You proved the SEAL evaluators right, Lieutenant. Your ego endangers everyone around you. This is a setup, Dane's face flushed red. You're railroading me because the Academy needs its diversity quota to work. You're sacrificing my career to protect political correctness. I'm holding you accountable for criminal conduct, Harrington replied. Captain Kincaid won despite your sabotage. That makes her victory more impressive. Your actions proved exactly why women belong in combat instruction and why you don't. Patterson leaned forward. Lieutenant Wolcott, you're relieved of all instructor duties, effective immediately. Pending formal investigation, you're restricted to base. Cadet Holloway, you're on academic and disciplinary probation. Both of you will face administrative review boards within 30 days. He turned to Alex. Captain Kincaid, do you wish to press criminal charges? Every eye in the room fixed on her. This was the moment that would define her tenure at Westbrook. The choice between justice and mercy, between destruction and redemption, between proving she could crush opposition and demonstrating she didn't need to. No, sir. Dane stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Couldn't process mercy from someone he'd tried to destroy. Lieutenant Wolcott made serious errors in judgment, Alex continued. But I didn't come to Westbrook to end careers. I came to prove that capability transcends gender. Criminal prosecution serves my ego, not that mission. Administrative consequences through command channels are sufficient. Patterson studied her for a long moment. Your restraint is noted, Captain. However, the evidence requires action regardless of your personal wishes. Lieutenant Wolcott, you're dismissed from this debrief. Report to the Provost Marshal's office for a formal statement. Cadet Holloway, you're dismissed to your quarters pending disciplinary review. The two men left in silence. Brock looked broken, ashamed. Already understanding his military future was over. Dane walked with shoulders back and head high, maintaining dignity even as his world collapsed. After they departed, Patterson addressed the remaining cadets. You 8 have witnessed something extraordinary, not just a tactical victory, but a demonstration of professional excellence under impossible circumstances. Captain Kincaid's team overcame sabotage, physical limitations, and criminal assault to complete their mission. Lieutenant Wolcott's team learned that strength without integrity is worthless. Dismissed. The cadets filed out quickly. Alex's team moved together, already bonding in ways that would last decades. Dane's remaining team members scattered, avoiding eye contact, processing failure and complicity. When only command staff remained, Patterson turned to Alex. Off the record, Captain, why didn't you press charges? You had everything you needed to destroy him. Because destroying him makes this about personalities instead of principles. Sir, Dane Wolcott is one man with one problem. The issue I'm addressing is institutional. Whether women can succeed in combat instruction. Showing mercy despite having power proves I'm professional, not vindictive. That serves the larger mission better than revenge. Patterson nodded slowly. You're right, though it pains me to admit it. Colonel Harrington recommendation. Captain Kincaid has proven herself beyond any reasonable doubt. I recommend immediate promotion to Assistant Director of Combat Training. Effective date 3 months. Gives us time to restructure the program around her methodologies. Approved. Captain, congratulations. You've earned it. After the meeting concluded, Alex found herself alone in Harrington's office. The old colonel poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. They drank in comfortable silence. 3 months, he said finally. Then I retire. Turn over the program to you. Think you're ready? No, but I'll figure it out. That's the only honest answer. He smiled. Your father said the same thing when they promoted him to major. Not ready, but I'll adapt. Adaptation is all that matters. You're really leaving. 40 years is enough. Time to let younger officers take over. Besides, my back's getting worse. Montana sounds better every day. I'll miss having you here. I'll miss being here. But that's how it works. We train the next generation. Then we get out of their way and let them improve on our mistakes. 3 months later, the academy had transformed in ways subtle and profound. Lieutenant Dane Wolcott was gone, quietly reassigned to a logistics position in South Dakota, not prosecuted per Alex's decision, but effectively exiled to irrelevance. His military career was technically intact. His prospects were destroyed. Sometimes mercy was the cruelest punishment. Cadet Brock Holloway remained, on probation, working under Alex's supervision, learning that strength without integrity was just bullying with better PR. He'd proven surprisingly teachable once his ego shattered, had even apologized publicly to Melissa for multiple incidents. Redemption was possible. Not easy, but possible. The ceremony took place on a crisp November morning. The entire academy assembled on the parade ground, 240 cadets in dress uniforms, 16 instructors, visiting officers from 3 services. The media was present but kept at a distance. This was a military moment, not a public spectacle. Colonel Wyatt Harrington stood at the podium in full dress uniform, 40 years of service displayed in ribbons and medals across his chest. 3 wars, 4 decades, more memories than he wanted and fewer friends than he deserved. Attention, Sergeant Major Brennan's voice carried across the parade ground. The formation snapped to perfect stillness. Ladies and gentlemen, Patterson began, today marks a significant transition. Colonel Harrington retires after 40 years of distinguished service. Captain Kincaid assumes the role of Assistant Director of Combat Training. Colonel Harrington will address the academy. The old soldier approached the microphone, looked across faces that reminded him of every generation he'd trained. Young, confident, unaware of how quickly combat would age them. 40 years ago, I joined the Army because my country asked, his voice carried without amplification. Served in 3 wars, trained thousands of officers, learned lessons I didn't want and needed ones I never got. He paused, let silence stretch. Public speaking was rhythm, knowing when to push and when to let the audience breathe. When I started, the military was different. We had rules about who could serve where, rules about roles women could fill, rules that seemed permanent and unquestionable. He gestured toward Alex. 3 months ago, Captain Kincaid completed a field evolution that some said was impossible for a female officer. She overcame sabotage, physical assault, criminal conspiracy designed to ensure her failure. His expression hardened. She didn't just succeed. She demonstrated that tactical thinking matters more than physical strength, that adaptability beats aggression, that the future of military leadership belongs to those who think clearly when chaos reigns. He removed something from his pocket, a challenge coin worn smooth by decades of handling. This coin was given to me by Captain Kincaid's father. February 1991, Desert Storm. Major William Kincaid saved my life and 47 others by thinking instead of fighting. Told me to keep it as a reminder that intelligence beats strength. He held it toward Alex. Your father would be immensely proud of what you've accomplished, what you've proven, what you represent. I know I am. Alex stepped forward, took the coin, felt its weight in history. Her throat tightened with emotions she'd kept suppressed for months. Don't make me cry in front of the entire academy, she whispered. You're allowed to be human, Raven. Even warriors get to feel. She pocketed the coin, moved to the microphone. Her voice wasn't as strong as Harrington's, didn't carry the same natural authority. But it held something else. Authenticity born from blood and mud and nights that lasted forever. I'm not a hero, she began. I'm an officer who did her job under difficult circumstances. The real heroes are the ones who didn't come home, the ones who gave everything. The best way I can honor them is ensuring the next generation of officers is better prepared than we were. She looked across the formation, saw Melissa and Jennifer in the front rank, saw Brock 3 rows back standing at attention, saw faces representing the future. Some of you still doubt whether women belong in combat roles. That's your right. But I'm going to prove you wrong through results, through training that prepares all of you for modern warfare's realities, through standards measuring capability instead of gender, with or without your approval. Clear? Yes, ma'am. The response thundered. After the ceremony, Alex found Harrington in his office. Boxes packed, 40 years condensed into cardboard. Montana, she asked. Small town, mountains, quiet, where the loudest sound is wind through pines instead of artillery. You'll be bored in a week. Probably, but I'll be bored with a working back. That's worth something. She helped him carry boxes to his truck. They worked in comfortable silence born from shared understanding. At his truck, he paused. One last thing, your father's journal. Read the last entry again, February 25th. You're ready to understand it differently now. That evening, she opened the leather-bound journal, found her father's final entry, his handwriting steady, unhurried, words written hours before death. Harrington asked why I analyze everything. Told him guts get people killed, brains keep them alive. If I can save lives by thinking better, seeing patterns others miss, staying one step ahead, then that's what I'll do. That's the only way this job means anything. Save lives, bring people home. If something happens to me, I hope Alex remembers this. The most important weapon isn't the gun in your hand. It's the mind that decides when and how to use it. That's my legacy. Think clearly, act decisively, save lives. Nothing else matters. She closed the journal, finally understood. Her father hadn't been writing about combat operations. He'd been writing instructions for her future. A message across time from a father who'd known the risks, not about victory or pride or proving anything. About saving lives, bringing people home. That was the mission, had always been the mission. 5 years later, Major Alexandra Kincaid ran the entire combat training program at Westbrook Academy. The office was larger, responsibilities expanded. Mission unchanged. Her windows overlooked the parade ground where mixed-gender instructor teams drilled new cadets. 40% of combat instructors were female now, up from 2% when she'd arrived. The change had been gradual, inevitable, built on results that couldn't be dismissed. Brock Holloway was her executive officer. Full redemption arc complete. The man who tried to destroy her was now her strongest advocate. Proof that people could change when given reason and opportunity. Lieutenant Melissa Frost was her most requested instructor, specialized in unconventional warfare tactics. The small cadet who'd nobody believed in had become the Academy's tactical genius. Her door opened. A young cadet stood at attention, dark hair, scar visible on her forearm. Reminded Alex of herself years ago. Cadet Sarah Mitchell reporting, ma'am. The name hit like recognition. One of Alex's former students, lost in Iraq 4 years ago, left behind a husband and daughter who'd been 15 at the time. 15, same age Alex had been. Your mother was an exceptional officer, Alex said quietly. Saved 12 people in a convoy ambush using tactical thinking. I trained her, recommended her for advanced infantry. I know, ma'am. She talked about you. Said you taught her that being smart beats being strong. Alex studied the young woman, saw the same fire, the same need to prove something, the same understanding that uniform was calling and curse, and the only way to honor the fallen. You're going to face doubt, Cadet Mitchell. People will question whether you belong. Use your mother's death as evidence against female combat roles. You'll want to prove them wrong through aggression. The young woman nodded, already preparing for that fight. Don't, Alex said. Prove them wrong by being smarter, more adaptable, better at thinking 3 moves ahead. That's what your mother learned. That's what I'll teach you. Yes, ma'am. Alex handed her a coin, the same coin Harrington had given her, the same coin her father had given him in 1991. This coin has history. My father gave it to Colonel Harrington. He gave it to me. Now I'm giving it to you. It represents a legacy. Brains beat brawn. Thinking clearly saves lives. The only weapon that really matters is between your ears. Sarah Mitchell took the coin, held it like a sacred object. Make your mother proud, cadet. Make yourself proud. Most importantly, make sure everyone you lead comes home alive. That's the mission. Everything else is noise. Yes, ma'am. Alex watched her leave. Saw herself years ago, saw her father decades ago, saw every officer who'd understood that service meant responsibility for lives beyond your own. Sunset painted Westbrook Academy gold and crimson. The same parade ground where she'd been doubted and dismissed now held cadets who assumed women belonged in combat roles, who inherited progress without knowing its cost. That was fine. That was good. That was what progress looked like. Fighting battles so the next generation didn't have to. In Montana, Harrington sat on his porch watching sunset paint mountains the same colors. His phone buzzed. Photo from Alex. Sarah Mitchell holding the coin. Caption, "The legacy continues." He typed back, "Your father would be so damn proud." In Arlington National Cemetery, sunset painted white headstones. Gold. Section 60. The newest graves holding imperfect people who'd given everything. If stones could speak, if the dead could witness the living, Major William Kincaid would have seen what his final journal entry created. A legacy not of victories but of wisdom, not of dominance but of doctrine, not of proving anything except that capability transcended everything else. His daughter had learned the lesson, had taught it to others, had built an institution valuing thinking over fighting, adaptation over aggression, intelligence over strength, had brought people home alive. The only mission that mattered, the only legacy worth leaving. The silent warriors fought on, not for glory or recognition, not to prove anything except that the future belonged to those who could think clearly when everything burned. In classrooms and training grounds across America, a new generation learned that lesson. Learned that the most important weapon wasn't the gun in their hand, but the mind deciding when and how to use it. That was the legacy. That was the mission. That was the only thing worth fighting for. Saving lives, bringing people home. Everything else was just noise. And in that mission, Captain Alexandra Kincaid had succeeded beyond any measure her father could have imagined. Not by being stronger than men, not by being louder or more aggressive, but by being smarter, more adaptable, better at thinking 3 moves ahead when chaos screamed around her. The Academy stood as proof, 240 cadets who would graduate believing capability mattered more than gender. 40 instructors who'd learned that lesson through watching one woman refuse to break under impossible pressure. The future was bright, not because prejudice had been eliminated, but because one generation had proven it wrong so thoroughly that the next generation could build on that foundation. That was victory. That was legacy. That was everything. The silent warrior had won, not through violence, through competence, through professional excellence that couldn't be denied or dismissed. And somewhere in the Virginia sunset, if you listen carefully, you could almost hear William Kincaid whispering across decades to his daughter, "Well done, Raven. Mission accomplished. Bring them home. Always bring them home."